What up, everybody? It's your boy Ragnarok. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button or elbowed that subscribe button or backhanded the like button, it is about that time because we are about to get into Transfer Mania. You know what this is. We're going to talk about the good stuff, the bad stuff, all the fun stuff around transfers, one of the most polarizing topics in our game. I hope you guys are ready. Let's go. We are doing something completely different than we've ever done. We're doing a little transfer roundtable. We have 3 VIP 18 guests on here. I have from server 96, Abria joining me. Thanks, Abria, for coming on.
Happy to be here, Rag.
Let's go. Coming back. We got from server 269, Mr. AAM83. What's going on, AAM?
Hello, I'm good.
Let's do this, baby. And then last but not least, we got from my server, server 200, Deadlights. Welcome back.
Hey, Rag. Happy to be here as always.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, let's get into this. Guys, transfers. This is a very hot topic. People are really just all over the place when it comes to this. People can't agree. We want developers to get in the mix. Like, what do you, off the get-go, Deadlights, like, what's your initial feeling with transfers? Just like, is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing from a developer standpoint? Like, what are your initial thoughts being an R5, also being a VIP 18? How does this affect you?
I mean, I think it's a really important part of the game in terms of, being able to retain players. Obviously the war zone that you start off in is just something that you just kind of get randomly thrown into whenever you first start the game. Unless you choose to create a new character and target a specific war zone, which most people don't do. Mm-hmm. So it's really good for, as you play for months and even years at this point, that you have that sort of flexibility of, hey, I don't really like it here anymore, or we didn't grow as strong as we'd like, and I'd like to be more competitive. Maybe I want to go somewhere else, and maybe you made other friends throughout the seasons of the game, and it's just nice to have that option to be mobile, and not feel stuck. And I think that's a good thing to avoid from a development perspective.
No, totally. I mean, so right off the get go, I think we all agree, and I'm going to throw this actually to Abria next. This is a great thing for the game, right? That we actually have the option to actually transfer. So one thing the developers definitely did a great job in giving us this option. I know a lot of games, you don't have this option, but we have that option. So from your standpoint, is this a really positive thing? I mean, for me, looking at it as an outsider playing the game, I think it's great to even have the ability to transfer, Abria. Is it feeling mutual from your standpoint?
Yeah, it is. It is. I would say the transfers selfishly are very positive for 96. It helps us, being one of the earlier servers, try to regain players that have lost or moved on for multiple reasons. Right. I think the one thing that's the con to it, servers that don't, let's say, have VIP 18 or multiple 17 anchors, it's actually a detriment to them. So I think as we look at the transfers, it's positive for some, and I would say actually negative, and actually kills the game from others because there's only so many seats to go around and other things. So I would say from the earlier servers, for the ones that are, stronger in terms of we hit the lottery in terms of people coming and joining the server, I think it's positive. But I think what we need to try to fix as a game, and I think Deadlights mentioned the longevity piece, is how do we incorporate or get some of the servers that aren't necessarily lucky to be destination servers, but still be able to get them healthy and staying involved and playing, because that's really the important long-term piece for the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, swinging this back around, it's like the transfer is super positive, but for so many, it could be also super negative, right? It could be detrimental to folks because your entire server might feel like they're leaving for whatever reason. How do we kind of, I guess my question going to AAM next is, what's one of the bigger problems that as the landscape currently from the current transfer model, what's the biggest problem that the transfers have in your opinion, as an R5 of 269, what is a problem that you guys see currently on 269 as the current transfer model is going right now?
As I mentioned in our last interview, Rag, is I have a problem with the accumulated transfer score. My opinion is whatever the number is, whatever the algorithm is, there are players that are not playing. So my question again, are they accumulated in the points? Or you see, the transfers are great.
Sure.
If you're a competing server or you want to bring like your friends or whatever, but in other games, players that don't play for 1 month or more than that, are they accumulated in the points? That's my problem with it.
No, I think it's a great question. I mean, I'm going to swing it back to Abria. I mean, do you think, I mean, again, it's a do you think, and obviously this can go from Abria to back to Deadlights. Do you think from the algorithm standpoint, the developers are actually using that right now? And like, what is activity? Because I think that's maybe one of the largest problems that AAM's bringing up right now is how does the algorithm reflect my server? Right? Because if someone was here, 3-4 months ago, are they still being accumulated in that transfer score? Abria, from your standpoint, do you think that is a problem for you guys or other, servers in your area?
I never thought about it like that. Like, what is actually makes up the transfer score of the server? Yeah, that's wild to think about. Is it the top 100, the top 200, and then is it the 150 and 200 play like once every 25 days? So it's not really of a value. How do they look at the overall health of the server is an interesting question. To me, I think the conversation, because I think a lot of people have left RAG in terms of, I can speak from 69 to 130. I think the people that are still active and playing have found a home. And then the other servers are starting to really become barren wastelands. So I'm not necessarily as AMS is so concerned about the transfer score. I'm curious of how do we keep getting and merging the active players within the server so it's a fun, competitive environment, because ultimately the devs make more money if there is more people playing.
Sure. No, you're totally right. No, it's like, how do we get these people to mine without also creating? I mean, everyone wants that super server, right? I think everyone wants to be on this.
I'm not saying create a super server. I think my vision of this is, obviously, like, we can use 96, 123 around us could be an anchor, 127 could be an anchor. I think they need to look at this. And from my understanding, talking to people, needs to be done in groups of like 32. Just the way some of the things in the game are done, from what I've gotten from Diva and others, and some things I've asked, just general questions. What I think we should do is find, of the earlier servers from 3 to 130, as an example, find your 32, let's say, or 16 anchors, and figure out a way to merge it. Now, there's a lot of problems with that. You're going to have people that have long-standing histories of not wanting to do it. But in my case, like, you can take server 94 and 95. They're kind of essentially dead servers. Like, we need to figure out a way to regroup the lower servers in 32 or 64. And you're going to have to force people to figure it out, right or wrong. They can still play the game with their alliance, but I think you just need to collapse multiple servers at this point in the lower half to keep the game active. I mean, there's really, I would just say 69 through 30 as an example. There's really only maybe 3 servers that could compete with some of the activity in the 200s and 300s left, which is, that doesn't keep people motivated and continue to play. You're just playing for a group of 100 people instead of, let's say, a group of 500-600 people out of a server.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. There's a lot going on there, right? From a problematic standpoint of, and you're kind of touching on a point that we're going to go to in terms of collapsing servers. I'm going to swing the question also back to Deadlights before we kind of go full circle here. But like, from a problem standpoint, initially, what are you seeing, Dead, in your opinion, from the current model as is? What is, I mean, I've heard people use the word it's cooked, it's broken, whatever you want to call it, the model, but what is, a big problem that you currently see in the model for transfers as is?
Yeah, so let me talk on a couple points here. So the first thing I want to do is kind of come back to what AAM was saying earlier, which I do think is an interesting point, that the Warzone transfer scores, they're not very transparent. We don't really know what goes into them. We do know a little bit of what goes into your individual scores, your personal scores, like your top 15 heroes, so on and so forth. They have listed that out a little bit. I think it would be nice to have a little bit of transparency there in terms of how they rank the war zones. I do know that there's, at least in the list here that we have shown on the screen, there's certainly some of these rankings that I think are a little bit questionable, and I'd be very interested to understand more about that.
Sure.
It's of course a little bit of a balancing act, because the developers don't really want people to game the system.
Yeah.
With the very first transfers that happened, in the earliest Warzone, they ended up having to stop transfers because those folks figured out a way to game the system the developers had built, and so they had to go back to the drawing board, rethink it for a few months, which is understandable that they don't want people to game the system like that they want it to be, kind of a fair representative transfer, which I think is a good goal. I don't think we should, shy away from that. But, kind of coming back to your direct question to me of what I think is the biggest problem with the transfers is kind of related to this and why people want to game the system. And it's because the developers have created a system with a very small number of, really hard buckets that players, that individuals fall into. And we have a lot of issues around, like, people getting extremely disappointed, and some even to the point that they want to quit the game at that point because they fall into a higher bucket than they were expecting, and all of a sudden now they can't go where they want to with the transfers because we have this very hard line that's really difficult for people to know if they've crossed in advance.
And buckets, you're speaking specifically as seats, right?
Yeah, exactly. The seat classification for for the individual players. That's something that I think is an area that could use some improvements. I think it is something that, yes, it's necessary. Of course, you can't just freely allow anyone to transfer anywhere. They want to maintain some semblance of balance in the game. And that kind of leads me back to, I know we're going to touch more on this subject, I'm sure, and the idea of the different transfer tiers, but I want to talk a bit about what Abria was saying about mergers as well. I do think the devs have been very anti-merger from what I've heard from the discussions that I've had with them, and it does kind of make sense why they're anti-merger, and they are doing some things to try to address the notion that, hey, there's a lot of weaker servers. Mergers are difficult. There's a lot of people that play the game for various different reasons. I know we've encountered some people that, one of their favorite things is, hey, I want to lead my own war zone. Yep. And I don't care if it's, the strongest war zone in the game. Of course I want to compete, I want to win, but I want to be able to lead. And that's the fun part of the game for some people.
Sure.
And, sort of forcing those server mergers and taking somebody who's, maybe not able to compete at that highest level, not able to get the influence to lead a major war zone. That's sort of taking that away from them. And that could force people like that to quit the game because they want to compete in their own bracket. And you can kind of see in the way that developers have been making matchups in, Warzone Duel, for instance. They'll have these super brackets. Like we had one this past Warzone Duel groupings where it was 263, 252, 220, and 260. So the top four on this list here that you're seeing from transfer scores were all in the same Warzone Duel bracket.
Yep.
It was just super high powered matchups. Like fighting all the way to the end. It was great to watch, and there's plenty of videos of those matchups online as well. But then you have other Warzone dual brackets. I unfortunately don't have a specific example from this last group, but that are taking Warzones from more of the mid tiers or more of the low tiers. And those people are winning their own Warzone dual bracket, even though it's not anywhere near as competitive as at the top end.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that sort of we're creating effectively different leagues, kind of like what they have in Versus.
Yep.
It's just sort of hidden behind the scenes. And I think that is valuable from the developer's perspective, because even those people that maybe aren't spending as much on the game, aren't able to compete at the highest level, it gives them a goal.
Yeah.
And it gets them to keep playing. And I think that's what they really want at the end of the day. They want to keep that activity for as long as they possibly can. Yes, from our perspective, being from strong war zones, those war zones may look dead. But from a business standpoint, there's enough activity that it's still valuable to keep alive, because the incremental cost of keeping that war zone up and running is probably extremely small. So if you think about it from the dev's perspective, it actually makes sense, even if it may not be the most, ideal thing from a some players' views.
No, a long-winded answer, but a good answer, Dead, because you addressed a lot of the things that I think a lot of people are wondering. And you touched on a word that we're definitely going to jump into, of mergers. And I know people are excited because it's something that we've heard just a massive far cry for. I mean, it's there's no question. If they literally created a channel on their Discord for Transfer Surge, and it probably 1 out of every 15 comments bring up, hey, we should probably just do a transfer merge, right? So it's something we're going to actually start moving into next topic here. In terms of a transfer merge. And I'm going to throw this back to AAM here. From a merger standpoint, do you think the game at this point could actually use transfer mergers? Like, should that be a thing? Why do you think it also hasn't happened? I mean, Deadlights brought it up that they're pretty anti server merge. Why do you think that is? Is there some type of cost, ROI that we don't see behind everything, the cost of actually running a server? And then lastly, like, what issues do you believe that could either cause or would fix from a transfer merger standpoint, AAM?
Well, for the mergers, I agree with Abria and Dead. It's for the, let's say, lower activity servers.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be an option if they want. If I was one of the servers that has lower activity, I would love this option to either merge or not. The idea of 2 R5s agreeing to merge would be a good option. It's better than nothing. And it would boost activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an option for people who even want to compete.
Sure. I think, I guess I'm going to throw this back to Dead, and then now Abria, you'll be last. Sorry, Abria. Just trying to mix it up. Right. Trying to mix it up on you guys. From a merger standpoint, Dead, do you think you are rewarding some of these quote unquote dead war zones, if you will, and merging them with a very successful war zone? Do you think that would actually cause a lot of drama in that standpoint? I mean, I think, like you said, we've spoke to people that really value running their own war zone, being that R5. Do you think that would be something that would be escalated? Obviously, the potential of them getting in a better war zone is great. However, some of these folks might only want to be staying in these less competitive or smaller war zones. Do you see this would be a bigger fix, Deadlights, or do you see this causing a bigger problem from a merger standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is one of the big concerns that, with transfers, we're very careful in handpicking who we want to bring over. We want to make sure they're going to be a good cultural fit, that they're not going to cause problems. They understand, kind of how they're going to fit into the war zone, and they're happy with that. you can do that on an individual basis, or even as a, if we're bringing over a large group of large part of an alliance as a group transfer, that can work. It's really hard from a Warzone perspective. Like, you don't really know what you're bringing in. You don't really know what the personalities are, and especially if it's forced in a way, that would make it even worse. So I think it's kind of difficult to figure out what sort of system you would use to make that a fair thing that wouldn't cause more problems than it would solve, right? Because if you just say, hey, this war has to merge, and it has to merge with you, or it has to merge with one of these other war zones, what if nobody wants them, right?
Sure.
What are you going to do then?
Sure. No, I get it. It's I guess it's an underlining question. Like, is this better or is it worse? Right? Is this actually better for the game? Is it worse for the game? I think sometimes as players, we're very quick to just say we want to wave our Magic developer wand and just say, hey, go do this, without actually thinking about the potential risk of what it could do or not do. Also, just like, hey, wave our Magic developer wand and say, go create this. I think it's just something we do naturally, which I think is kind of funny. Going to Abria, do you think there's a lot of problems that this would actually create from a transfer merge standpoint?
Problems. Maybe. I would say in the grand scheme of it, no. I think everybody understands how to use the buffs and how to use all the things that could create animosity and anger, minus the wanted world boss hit 5% bonus. Like, I don't know what value you get out of the Warzone president other than the buff, right? There's no other real reason of value. You can control transfers, but if you have a stable server, that's all discussed anyway across the alliances. So from that standpoint, I don't see any real gain or hurt. I think where you're going to have is long-hated rivalries where, you're either going to figure it out or, you're just going to go the separate ways. But I think some of the newer or the older Warzones, I don't think if I were to transfer with 86 as an example, we've had a rivalry with them forever. I wouldn't go and just burn 86. I would look at them and say, okay, let's figure out how to work together and value that all of the battles that we fought with them, right?
Like, so if they actually stuck you together, if you will, right?
Exactly. I mean,
gotcha.
I would look at it. I think all of us from 69 through 31 as a whole would look at it as, hey, this is what it is, and we got to figure out how to make it work, right? Because I don't know if you guys experience it, but my view of what I think would be really healthy is where we could have like 1,000 servers, 500 people in the mud and battling. That's just a pipe dream. That doesn't exist anymore. It never will. It gets less and less as the time goes. So,
sure.
What I want is to figure out whether it's a group of 32 or 64, figure out by total power, user activity over the last 90 days. They have all this statistics. They can get into the system and see how many people log on, their total power. You can separate the war zones within 10% accuracy very quick.
Sure.
Right. And do it and move it. And then then at that point you could have some stability and similar server strength and numbers and people. And then if you're not happy, you could do a post transfer after that. But I think at some point there has to be a consolidation. I mean, just to be transparent, you guys have more, I think, depth of servers that can battle you guys. I mean, outside of 123, we took the other one server 127, they got 1%. They have 2 VIP 18s. It's just it's the Capital Wars aren't even a fun environment anymore, right? They used to be a blast and it used to get the server wild and happy. You don't even have that anymore in any of the Capital Wars. The outcome's already predetermined.
So you're in your transfer grouping, at least you feel like that's already happening.
In what way, Rack? What do you mean?
Yes, you're just saying, hey, the Capital War is not as fun as it used to be, essentially.
It's dead. I mean, I could tell you every Capital War, unless something catastrophic happened to a group that didn't show up to play, who would win just based off of the activity and what server, what alliance is in what server. I mean, it's starting to get that thin, Rag, in the in the lower servers.
Interesting. No,
so I mean, to me, that is something that's got to be fixed, because if not, eventually you just have an alliance related game, and then what's the point of servers at that point?
Yeah,
I mean, literally we're battling alliances at this point.
No, you're not wrong. I think if they're going to do this and they're going to introduce this, I use the word sadly, they're going to have to do this like they've done it with everyone else, meaning the first servers that are going to get this are the 3 through 68. Right. And I call them the test dummies, and I'm sorry, it's not a negative thing at all, but it's so sad. It's sad, but it's true. You guys are in that subset, and we're throwing mud against a wall, and we're seeing what works and not works. Right. And I think the developers, what I have seen so far, if something doesn't work, they fix it pretty quickly. If there is a far cry from a lot of people, especially from people that haven't got it introduced yet, but they can see what's happening. And there's a lot of just pushback. They're pretty quick to, actually change course, which is amazing from my standpoint, meaning that developers are listening. I know a lot of the times we as players are like, oh, the developers don't listen. No, these developers with this game actually do. So I think that's a very big positive that people that I hope are watching this go play another game. They don't care, right? You don't get a lifeline to actually talk to the developers a lot of the times. So this game, they actually do listen. They hear you, whether or not they're going to make the change that you want. That's to be said. But going forward, kind of wrap the mergers up. I'm going to ask all three of you guys. At this point in the game, would you actually, suggest a merger? And I'll start with AAM, and then I'm going to go to Dead, and then I'll finish with Abria. So AAM, at this point in the game, would you suggest to the developers actually doing server mergers?
As I said just now, merge would be an option for the lower activity server as an option.
Only? Okay.
But, thinking of it more, it may be, as Dead said, more of a problem than a solution.
Got it.
So and there's sorry to continue.
Please.
Different players have different perspectives on the game. Some want to compete, and some just want to have fun and have their group with each other. So even the merge, they don't care about it.
I get it.
So for me personally, as a competitive player, I would like to see the lower activity servers to have the option to either merge or not.
No, I get that. I like that. So Deadlights, what would be your answer around that?
So I think it kind of depends on what server range we're talking about. I think for sort of our range, the 197 to 292 range, I don't really think we're there yet. I think there's still a lot of activity overall. Yes, there are a number of very weak war zones, and if you were going to do any sort of mergers, I think it would make a lot more sense to merge week and week, right? So just take those lower activity and bring it up above the level where it makes sense to keep those war zones around, rather than trying to sort of push the weak war zones into the strong ones. Now, if you're talking about the earlier server ranges, like where Abria is in, I think there are certainly a lot more war zones that are a lot less active even than our least active war zones in our range. And for them, I think there is something to be said more about server mergers. But I really do continue to think that it's really a focus on the weaker end. And I don't know that it's the right move to just take the weakest, least active war zones and merge them into the top ones. I think it's more of a consolidation of inactivity to make it active enough, right?
Sure. No, I agree, because also, at what point are you rewarding a little bit of the mediocrity, right? You don't want to put we have 96 servers, right? You don't want to put the 96 ranked. And again, I'm not, as I'm showing on this screen, and for people that are, watching this, looking at this, these are obviously all the transfer scores, transfer rankings. And according to the transfer rankings from the last one we just had, who was tied? I mean, it looks like a lot of people were tied here in the transfer score. So it's hard to say just one. You know, it looks like multiple war zones had 548. So it would be, in my opinion, it doesn't look good if one of these 548 have to be pushed into like server 263, server 220, server 252, right? Because you're now rewarding that mediocrity and you're just putting these folks in. There's a reason a lot of the times why they're very inactive. A lot of bad things could have happened, or just some folks just left the game naturally, but you're also just rewarding that mediocrity. Going to Abria, you know, you fall into that earlier Warzone set. Are you welcoming mergers at this point of the game? Are you very much like, hey, bring it open. We need more people.
Yeah, I'm 100% for mergers. I mean, what Deadlight says, maybe we do it in stages, right? Where you merge the weaker ones to get activity and get it up so that there can be some, let's say, potentially competitive war zones if they so choose to do that, right? And then I think you can look at then, you know, activity, number of users. I think the bigger thing where I'm at, what I think that'll help the earlier servers is you get a similar number of people or across a similar number of total hero power. To me, that adds a lot more fun, value to the game, strategy, win or lose, regardless. I mean, I can give you a view of what we did in 96 Rag to make the server a more of a destination server to try to get as many people as we could was, you know, I don't get to compete against You Got Dead and other people and the Winter Storm and Canyon and these because, you know, we split all of our 3 VIP 18s across 3 different alliances. So it becomes a more of a destination place, right? So totally. We, as in Stick, Patar, and myself, we don't get the ability to battle against, let's say, the better players outside of Winter Storm, but in any of the Desert Storm or things like that, just because we've chosen a different path to try to make the server a more longer term vision with regards with that. So to me, it's the number of people and then power. I mean, you can create a very equal balance that makes that a lot more fun and a lot more competitive as a result of that. In my view, they have all the statistics to do it.
No, you're totally right. The algorithm's there, and I know everyone wants to know the algorithm. We don't need to know it. Otherwise we're going to game the system. And just to like kind of double off what you guys have done, it's brilliant because you guys, Patar, yourself, Stickman, all being in different alliances makes you guys very sexy. Because now I can play with a VIP here, I can play a VIP there. That makes it very sexy. And if you don't like that alliance, you go to the next alliance, so on and so forth. And it also just encompasses more of a team atmosphere, if you will, on an alliance. Not that the entire alliance is surrounded by one alliance, if that makes sense. So sorry, the entire server is surrounded by one alliance. I got that backwards. But no, I love that you guys have done that. And that took a lot of foresight probably early on to kind of figure that piece out. One thing we're going to kind of do now is, I think we've kicked the dead horse of mergers a little bit. Another concept I think a lot of players have heard is this idea of this quote unquote red seat, if you will, right? Right now, as everyone can see, how this is broken down. And I think Deadlights put it into the words of buckets, right? So we have the limited bucket, if you will. We have this semi-open bucket, meaning you can get a gold seat. And at the very bottom here, you have fully open where you can get 2 gold seats. So the idea of this, quote unquote, rumored, I call it rumored because we don't know, red seat that might be happening. I want to dive into that. What would that look like for all of us? What do we think that would mean? And I'll start with Deadlights here off the get-go. What do you think a red seat is going to be? Again, this is all just speculation, obviously, but do you think that is going to be a seat that's higher than the gold seat? Do you think it's going to be in that middle gold to purple seat? Is everyone going to get a red seat? What do you think that, why do you think they're even suggesting or a rumor of that? And is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Let's just kind of get into that. What do you think, Ded?
Well, so one of the problems that they have right now, one of, not the only, is the fact that the gold seat bucket is way, way, way too large. You have people that are, not even VIP 17 that are gold seats, and then you have obviously all the way up to the strongest people in the game.
Agreed.
Right? And
Agreed,
that is such a massive range that it's really not the same type of person that you can bring in for those seats. And the fact that it's broken down that way, is sort of ripe for some kind of improvement. And certainly creating another seat is one way, maybe not the best way, and we can touch on some other ideas for what can be done later on. But I do think it does somewhat help the situation, at least creating one more tier. And so having a tier more for the very top end players, people who have been VIP 18 for a long period of time, are in some of the upper echelons of power in the game. Like having a reserved section for those folks versus the people that are upper end VIP 16s, VIP 17s, or low end VIP 18s. That kind of range makes sense to have its own bucket, its own chair for. And that should be something that I really think maybe the very very highest end war zones that already have multiple top end VIP 18s, like just looking back at this list, 263, 252. Maybe those types of war zones shouldn't be able to get even somebody in that range, right? Because they already have 4 or 5 people that are sitting in that range. But the war zones below that, like 200, for example, we don't have a second player between me and a lot of our people that maybe just turned VIP 17. Like they're on the lower end of this bucket that I'm talking about.
Sure.
And it does make it a little bit harder to compete with a lot of these higher end war zones that do have multiple folks, because they took good advantage of that first gold seat that was given to us. We unfortunately lost our first gold seat. That was an unfortunate situation I'm not going to go into, but the point is we pulled somebody over. That person didn't work out. That person left again. And so we kind of got hosed from that standpoint, and that was our one opportunity, and we haven't gotten one since then.
Sure.
We've done pretty well to build up power after that, but it would be nice to be able to get somebody in that range. And I know plenty of people that are sort of in that range that would like to move. But they're, maybe in a war zone that was, upper mid tier. It was somebody they were trying to build it into a stronger war zone. It just didn't work out. Mm-hmm. Now they're stuck in this power range that they're not going to be below a gold seed if it's, happens the same way after season 5. They may not even be able to transfer if it's the same format after season 6. Like they'd have to hold for a very long time to come down to the level where they can transfer to a decent war zone. Mm-hmm. And so giving those folks a way, because those folks are spending a decent amount of money. They may not be the highest tier, but they're somewhere in the mid. And now they're stuck in a place where they can't get to a good war zone. They're not happy where they are. Their war zone is dropping in activity quite precipitously. And giving those folks that are feeding money into the game a way to transfer to a better landing spot is something that the devs should consider.
Sure. No, I totally agree. There's so much to unpack here. A few things that I'm really kind of confused with this theory again, or rumor of this red seat is, where's the cutoff? Is it going to be, are we pushing the gold seat now a little higher, meaning that's more of a VIP 18 seat, just to give people also some idea, like, so Dead is sitting at like 500 plus million THP. I personally am at 260 THP. I was a gold. He was a gold. That doesn't make any sense. Literally, there's two, like he's twice as strong as me. So when he's talking about, there's such a discrepancy, if you will, around that point difference. That's a massive problem there. I think that's one. Creating a red seat, I like the idea initially, but I also, when I start thinking about it, my question is everyone going to be able to get this red seat? Is that also mean is it based off of something like you just said about VIP 18 or VIP 17 power? And I would, I'm coming now to Abria to bring you in this conversation. VIP power is very, it's a very elusive. And I mean, it's always not very telling. I'll give you an example. There was a player we fought in Desert Storm, and shout out to him for being a VIP 18. I think his name was Helpless. He was a VIP 18, but his total hero power was 275 or 280 million, right? Whereas I was just, my very first interview was Retta, and I don't think Retta at 350 or 360 THP has even hit his VIP 18 status, right? So I think that's a slippery slope a little bit if we're going to start, again, making, I guess, seats, if you will, based off VIP status. That's one slippery slope I see, Abria. And the other thing is, if we give it to everyone, right? If we give everyone these loose, really nice seats that players could go, aren't the rich, when I say rich, aren't the strongest people just going to get stronger? What is your kind of thoughts around that red seat idea and some of the questions I kind of brought up around?
Yeah. I think it's fixing the discrepancy. I mean, we had the same problem. We had a 225 million total hero power player be a gold seat. I think it unfortunately, or right or wrong, keeps the lower end gold players with the inability to move, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's the problem with the current system in terms of, they're valuable players to the war zone. Then, unfortunately, right or wrong, they're not going to be able to move, especially in a smaller grouping, right? Like, I think you guys had a larger grouping last time. I think we had a grouping of 32 servers as an example, right? So I think there's a big discrepancy there that they need to fix in terms of, I think you have a couple of classifications to do that. I think the bigger thing is, you take like the rich servers, I'll use like 96 and 123 and 127. We all get the same 3 purple seats, the same number of blue seats, and the same number of white seats, right? Yes. I think there needs to be some weighted metric on total hero power to the number of people. You choose the total hero power that you want to achieve. You can achieve that through 1,000 blues if you so choose. You can achieve that with 1 red seat as an example, right? To me, I think that allows you to have a little more flexibility of the server and what the needs are for the server. Like we don't need top end power. We need active blue players and a purple player. I would take 5 purple players versus one red seat as an example that are crazy active. Sure. That are higher end on the scale. So there needs to be some type of balance. Rag, I don't know off the top of my head. Like I haven't necessarily thought about that, but to me, there needs to be different classifications, as Dead said, of the gold to red seat, just so it allows people to be more freely movable. Because right now, low level golds can't go anywhere. Nobody will take them because there's no upside in that spot. So it unfortunately traps more players than it helps in that regard, right? Yeah, no.
I don't know if you saw my notes, but you're forecasting something we're going to talk about in a second. So it's funny. It's like you're bringing up a problem, but I think we have a solution, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit. But I love the idea of, these low level golds. I'm a low level gold, right? And if I was not on a good server, which I'm very, thankful to be on one, but where would I go? Am I just going to go from one not good server to a not good server? Also, non-good servers is a relative term. When I say that, I'm talking about like a very competitive, big, strong server. If I wanted to get there, how do I get there? It's right now, we use the word trapped. You are trapped in this current system. And even creating that red seat, you're still going to be trapped. Going to my man AAM, from your standpoint, as everyone can see, you guys are sitting right in that middle of the road of that, area where you guys don't get a gold seat. Would this be a really big game changer for you getting a red seat? Do you think this would also help other servers around you? Or do you think this is just going to be another situation to where everyone's going to game the system? Everyone's going to get stronger around you. And it's not that people are getting weaker around you. Everyone's just getting stronger initially. And it's like I said, the stronger get stronger. AAM, what are your thoughts around that red seat?
Well, there are 2 parts for this question. First part, creating a red seat would open the bracket for the golden seat, as the guys said. If like and it should be on the player's total hero power, not his status
Okay.
as a VIP 18 or 17. So let's say, thinking out loud, from 350 to 600 plus or whatever is the red seat, and from like 350 to 200 is the golden seat. I think, and maybe most of the R5s here agree, the core of the game is not the VIP 18, is the active purple or blue player.
Sure.
The other thing is, as the game progresses, people are going to reach that 250, 300 total hero power, and there's still maybe VIP 16 or even 15 with all the exclusive weapons and everything.
Okay.
So like you said, Rag, you're on 270 hero power, right?
Almost, yeah. 265.
Almost.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So when the season starts and you get the exclusive
Sure.
weapons, even the start for Fiona and the other heroes,
Yep.
you'll be 300, almost 300.
Maybe we'll see. Oh, fingers crossed, right?
You understand, as the game progresses, the power progresses.
Yes, the power is increasing with the more stuff that is being introduced, without a doubt. 100%.
So as you said, Deadlight is like 500 something, right? So at the end of next season, he'll maybe top 600, but he's the same golden seat as a player with 230.
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
It doesn't. It doesn't make sense at all. So that's why it kind of leads me to our next kind of area we're going, because introducing another seat, we've called them, I think Dad used the word bucket. I'm going to use a term that, another friend of me, a friend of mine it's too rigid, right? So we need to kind of take the buckets out. We need to take the seats out, and they already have something they're using. So this is my kind of pitch, if you will, to the developers. And I think my hope is that you guys we can talk through this a little bit. Is they already currently right now give you a transfer score, right? So right now, if the transfer was tomorrow, you would get obviously your seat color, which I am proposing that we actually eliminate. And then they give you a transfer score. So all three of you guys are VIP 18s. All three of you guys are 400 plus. Sorry, Dad, you're 500 plus, whatever. But you guys have these scores also. And those scores are different. AAM's score is different than Deadlight's score. Deadlight's score is different from Abria's. Higher, lower, whatever, right? My proposal would be what is called a salary cap. We see this in sports. We see this in other games. And the funny thing is, it wouldn't be a lot of work initially because we already have these transfer scores that they've given us, right? Now, how and where this is going to hurt and who this is going to hurt the most potentially are the best servers. And you know what? I'm even speaking against myself because I think we are a good server and a good alliance, and we have a lot of positive things. And I'll tell you why potentially this can hurt. It's going to limit the people we can bring in, right? So right now, as things are currently going, if we're all looking at this, server 272, and again, shout out to them, know them very well. They had to compete to bring in the same people that YXI and 263 did, as did 207, which I know them very well, as did 273. They're competing with all the top end. That's really not fair, right? At the end of the day, from a type of player situation, something that Abria just brought up, when we need to look at these types of players we need to bring in, what is going to be most beneficial for you and your server, right? For Abria, he already has acknowledged, I want a bunch of more blues. I need a bunch of more activity, right? I don't need the top end, and maybe 263 is looking at it as a similar situation. Maybe they said, you know what, we could actually get more activity. I want a lot more blue seats. So when you take those kind of ideas of the rigidity of the buckets off, and I'm going to come back right now to AAM. I know I had you go last. I'm going to have you go first, if you will. the idea of a salary cap proposal would increase the amount of players like 269 could actually potentially bring in versus even my server, right? At alt my server at 200. So you would get more people and potentially better people you could bring in. Would that be a potential solution, you think, that all servers could possibly win?
I agree with the idea as a concept. It makes more sense to me. But the only the problem with that, if you have an R5 who would only benefit from the salary cap to his own benefit and alliance. So for us at 269, each transfer, we go to the R5s of the alliance. What do you need? What do you need? We negotiate and we get as much as possible as all of us agree on. My concern is if you give that much power and now it's not divided, so I have to divide the points, right?
Sure.
So I would go if it's 100 points and each purple player is 50.
Yep.
I would go 2 purple players for me. That's the only problem.
Oh yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly, AAM. It's going to make you guys as the R5s have to really figure out what your needs are, what your wants are, and where you're going to divide them. Rather than, I know a lot of servers, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure a lot of you guys all might do this, is sometimes people will say, hey, you're going to get 5 seats. You get 3 blues, you get 10 blues, whatever it is. They'll just divide the seats up, right? In this case, it's more so, hey, what are we doing for the war zone? What does our war zone need? What does our alliances also need? Okay. Oh, wow. In this case, maybe, at 269, we could actually get a gold player, but guess what? We can only get 1 player and maybe 2, call it 2 white seats. That's what they were called before. But you know what? You added that 1 gold player. And when I say that gold player, he's not a Deadlights type of player in terms of strength, but maybe he's 300 THP. Maybe that's what you guys need because that's what you guys want, right? Would that be a solution that you think would work for you guys? Now, on the flip side, we're all speaking about this from I call it a very privileged place, right? We're all in very good servers and we're very happy about that. Where this can potentially really help. And I kind of want someone like Abria to talk about this because you're in a situation where you're saying that, there's a lot of participation that's kind of thinning, right? If you will. Yep. This could really, really revive. I think that's the idea that developers want. They want to revive or help those smaller servers. So now you are increasing that threshold, not anymore of hey, you can get 2 gold seats. Hey, you could bring 3, 4 gold seats maybe to potentially of some of these bad spots. And if you have that type of thing going on, that's going to make some of these really good servers, Abria, have to make sure that they're treating their people inside their server really well because now they're not going to be trapped anymore, right? So what are your kind of thoughts?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around that? Sorry, I talked over you. What'd you say?
You might have the inverse happen, right? Of what you're trying to solve for. You might have a good server that doesn't try to, help the server as a whole. You might before you know it, if you allow it open kimono, it might be let's say not the desirable list to go to. Yeah, there's got to be some way to figure it out with total hero power and the number of people, right? There has to be, and the buckets of seats is, to me, I don't think a lot of thought went into it initially. I think it was, we need to rush something out that we can get people to transfer because there was such a cry for it. But I think now through our third or fourth iteration of it, it should be a lot more refined, right? And I just think it needs to be based off of total hero power of the war zone and then what the cap is of that total hero power. Probably what's going to happen, right or wrong, Rag, the rich will continue to get richer and the poor will continue to get poorer. I mean, that's just going to be the unfortunate reality of the transfers. And that's why, I'll just say it. I'm a bigger proponent of the merger because I think that creates another level set and then you can do a refinement move on transfers after that, right? But it gets servers and war zones as a whole, or groups of 10 or 20 or 32 servers or whatever it is, a much more even, active total playing field. I mean, that to me, I think, is the end goal, because the more activity you have should be the more people are enjoying playing the game and investing more in it, right? I mean, that to me is the end game that they should be trying to solve. I think one thing they need to do, regardless of transfers, is they need to allow events, and they can do this based off of however. But for instance, I would love events like this new Desert Brawl, pros and cons to it, but I would rather we have a solution where you can have the top 30 of a server sign up, so we don't have to destroy alliances. We don't have to destroy things to play events, right? And they can be outside of season events or whatever, but I think the problem we're facing, and this might be similar for everybody, is to consolidate or collapse alliances to be best for whatever the season causes so much damage to the rest of the server. It's just not worth doing. And as a result, you take a potential environment like season 5, we don't know. It is a forcing function right now of what it looks to be to put all of your power into one alliance, right? And that doesn't help in the end game of it. So I think it'd be nice for them to give events to, as the top 30 or top 40 event, the people of a server, and then you have different classifications of servers that could do it. I mean, that's another way that they can do fun things to keep things active that aren't costing them anything, right? That's another something to think about as well.
No, I get it. At the end of the day, we want people to continue playing. I think that's also the developer's idea. How do we continue people playing? Because if people are playing continue, there's a more likelihood they'll start paying, right? They're going to buy something. Paying equals playing, not for everybody, but if it's fun, also creating a competitive environment wherever you're at. So if you're at the top end, I think they've done a really, really good job of creating better matchups. We saw that in Warzone Duel. We saw that even in season 4, because we had the 96. There was more war zones for them to pick from, if you will.
Yeah, your guys' Warzone. I mean, if you guys get group, I mean, look, you have what? And just looking at this, you have how many top 20 players in this Deadlights? I mean, it's insane. Your guys' grouping. There's
a lot. There's definitely a lot of strength there, without a doubt. And I think what you're going to see, and I don't know. I think we're going to get matched up with you guys, right? I think it's going to be 3 through 300 and something, or 400 or something in a year from now. I really do believe that. I think the matchmaking from there is even gonna get better. I also think the transfers from there are going to get better too, or at least are going to have more options, if you will. Kind of talking about this with Deadlights from his standpoint, his vantage point. What are the potential pros and cons of having a kind of an open salary cap, if you will, for these, especially like a big server or a stronger server like ours, but also like what's a pro and con for obviously these weaker servers out there that are looking to bring in, maybe like, what if they could get 2 Deadlights and potentially another like 2 really other strong folks, and then you have 5 other purples. You can actually revive somebody. Is that something that you think the game would allow? Do you think that's a thing that they'll actually potentially do going forward?
Well, I mean, I really don't think the lower end war zones are something that's going to be a destination for anybody, really. I don't think they should ever make it so that one transfer you can make a weak war zone, competitive at the top end, or really even at the mid end. I guess you can kind of do it in the middle ranges right now through one transfer if you get 2 decent gold players. But I mean, I think coming back to the first part of your question, like what are the pros and cons of this type of system? I'm going to start with the con,
sure.
Which I really think that the main con is it's a lot more complicated. The small number of buckets, categories you're putting players in war zones into is very simple. It's very easy to implement. It's very easy for the developers to achieve what is their main goal, which is that they don't want to create super servers. They don't want too much power to get concentrated in a single transfer and basically make one dominant war zone that nobody else can compete with, because they want competition, and I think they're right to want that competition, because that's what sort of keeps people playing the game. There's no competition, then people are going to get bored. That's totally true. But at the same time, everybody wants to get stronger. Everybody wants to, try to reach for that next goal to beat. And so they're trying to strike a balance with that. The current system does somewhat of a good job with that. But I really do think some flavor of the salary cap model maybe a hybrid system where you still have sort of these categories, both in the war zones and in the individuals, but there's also a cost associated with that gives you a little bit more flexibility, so that it's not quite as hard. Like, these top war zones can't get somebody in this broad gold category, but instead, hey, they have enough money to spend, enough points to allocate, that they can take somebody that's on the lower side of the gold tier if they want, but they have to sacrifice something. They have to trade off. Maybe they can't bring in, as many purple players, or they can't bring in as many blues or whatnot, and trying to come up with a system that sort of accomplishes that goal, I think would make the transfers a lot better. But like I said, it is a lot harder to do that. But like with our current system, like just sort of backing up to the way that we kind of handle transfers on 200, like our goal is really, we think about it from more of a war zone perspective. Like we have a finite number of seats that we have to fill. We learn from the earlier war zones mostly, and thank you, Abria, for all the information all you guys share with us, so that we can try to determine the cutoffs as we're heading in. We try to pick people that are, at the highest possible level, that are just below gold, that are just below purple. Try to bring the maximum amount of power that we can into the war zone with the limited number of seats we have. And so, to do that, we basically, talk amongst all of ourselves, the leadership of all the 200 alliances. We're talking way in advance with people, trying to get them to come over, trying to hold, forecasting, hey, this might be where the cutoff is. You need to make sure you start holding at this point to stay under that line. We're trying to game the system just like everybody else, and make sure that the people that want to move get the classification that they need, so that we can actually take them. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of our goal today. And, some of that might go away, at least to a certain extent, with a salary cap system, because if somebody just sneaks over that line, maybe they're slightly more expensive, but it's not going to break the bank. It's not going to destroy your transfers to try to take that person that just went over the line, or in the case of the purple gold line, be somebody that we can't take at that point. And I think that's one of the things that we want to avoid. Giving a concrete example at the lower end, we had an alliance that wanted to bring in a group of about a dozen players from another war zone, which I was happy to entertain, and I would have loved to bring them over. But then when they gave me all of their transfer tiers after those were announced, they had two blues that they were the lowest end blues you could possibly get. Like they should have been white seats, but for whatever reason, they were over that line. Mm-hmm. And it was like, look, guys, from a war zone power strength, I can't take these guys. Like they're just not at the level that we want for a blue seat, because all of our blue seats are being filled from the upper end of the blue range.
Sure.
And I can't afford to sacrifice one of those 30 seats to bring those people in. Whereas if I had a salary cap, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe we can make that work. It opens up a lot more possibilities.
Mm. No, I like it. We've talked about a lot of different things, right? Talked about salary cap, the red seat, the mergers, or server merge. At the end of the day, we're throwing stuff out there, and hopefully something is heard. That's kind of my hope with bringing all you guys together. Kind of tying all of this up, some final words, if you will. Was there anything AAM in particular that we haven't kind of touched on? I wanted to start with you. Is there something, or is there a system that you would like to see that we haven't kind of talked about that you think that should be implemented possibly from a developer standpoint? You know, there's a lot of stuff out there. But is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think we should give a voice to?
Well, I think we touched on the most controversial topic, which is the transfer and the merges and even the seats.
Sure.
The developers, for me, are doing a great job. I understand their perspective to make it competitive, and not only for the big servers or the strong players, but the core of the game, which is most of the players. Unfortunately, as the game progresses, like every game, the excitement tends to go down. Personally speaking, and I know you and Abria and Dead, we want to think or speak our voice on how to make it competitive and exciting again. So the players or the servers that want it more competitive will get that a bit, and even the players that enjoy the community and the game and don't care about these transfer merges or whatever, the game stays the same. The problem, or even our suggestions, is hopefully it doesn't kill servers that are not that active. That's my main concern. So it's not every player's perspective is how to compete more, how to win more. Some love the game because of the game. It's not about how to win Capital War or win the season. And thank you guys for having me. I'm sorry, I'm a bit under the weather, so that's why you know that.
No, you've given us a lot of awesome insight from your server, but also just awesome insight from where you think the game should go. So thanks for having you. I really appreciate that. One little piece that I think would help everything, and we didn't mention this, was I think everyone would agree on this. And I try to put my developer hat on, if you will. I don't think it's a hard thing to do, but we should make transfers a little bit more competitive, if you will. There should be some rewards around it. And how we do that, obviously rewarding folks, if you go to certain places, but there should be a point differential or a percentage of increase, right? Like obviously we have a transfer score, and the fun part is we already have that, I think it's a day or two where it's, you get to see what seats were filled, right? How much cooler would it be, right, if we had a potential to where we could see where players went, right? So if I could see, that one guy from server 245 went to, 263 now. Oh, that guy was really good. I remember them. And they get a point increase and a reward increase. Abria, is from your standpoint.
Sorry, just
no, please.
Cut you off. Just a minute. Sorry, Abria.
Cut off.
You remember when I told you one player from my alliance suggested something to me is great. So, in Capital War, we have the strong players fighting for the cannons and the capital, and let's say the engineers. They have a huge role in the war. Why don't they get points in Capital War when they do the cleanups and like that, so they can at least open the boxes?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a good idea. I don't know the answer to that. I think it's been suggested probably from a developer standpoint. I think also there's just a lot of big problems that developers are trying to work on. And I think server versus server is something that doesn't happen all the time. So it probably is one of those things that doesn't get as much attention as it should get, if that makes sense. So I think you're totally right. But I also think since it doesn't happen as often, they probably don't put as much attention to it. But no, I think it's a great suggestion. I just wanted to flex back to Abria though, on something, because do you think from our standpoint, we've kind of covered a lot of the transfer information out there that people are probably, talking about or wondering about? Also, if you could tell the developers anything, if you could be a voice of reason, Is there anything else like that we didn't hit that you would potentially want to tell them?
Yeah, I don't want to get shot by my server, but I would say my view is we should look at this as the NFL, right? You want to create parity, you want to create a something that, any given Sunday people can win, and that's not, unfortunately, right or wrong, that's not the environment that we have, right?
Sure.
That's kind of changed some in the season events with regards to alliances, and I'm gonna use the word backstabbing within factions, right? But overall, I think the idea of the server and the mergers, you really want to create parity so that the game is game's exciting to play. You don't know the outcomes before you have battles. To me, that to me is what makes the game more fun and more competitive and keeps myself coming back to playing, right? I mean, I love the salary cap type idea. Treat it kind of like the NFL, where everybody has a certain salary cap over a certain number of ranges. I mean, I know that gets complicated, as Deadlight said, you said, Rag, but the whole idea should be trying to create as much parity as possible across servers, right?
Yeah,
So that there isn't a full out onslaught or slaughter where you win a capital war where you can win it 100% to 0%, or you can do the different desert brawl that we had where people can't even hold a building for 20 seconds, right? I mean, like, to me, the game adds value when there's parity, and I think the NFL is a great model in that regard. As a Sunday, any Sunday anybody can win, and I think that's what keeps fans and people coming back to it.
All right. So Aubrey is definitely an NFL fan, obviously American football, but remember our audience is obviously a lot of people outside of America. So just want to make sure everyone knows we're talking about American football. So might get trolled for that. That's fine. That's totally fun. Love that. Kind of finishing touches, Deadlights. Was there anything in particular from a transfer standpoint that you think we needed to touch on or talk about or give a voice to? Anything in particular that you think we maybe missed or need to be kind of highlighted?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to touch back on an idea you had mentioned just a few minutes ago that I really find very interesting as we close out here. On a bit of a fun note is, it would be nice if they could turn transfers into, more of a game. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff that we have, sort of leaderboards, we have rankings, we have scores for. It would be very interesting for the current display stage of the transfers to be sort of overhauled. So it actually does display, hey, who transferred where, who transferred to a war zone, who transferred out of a war zone, and also show, right now we can only see the transfer scores going into the event.
Sure.
It would be interesting to see the transfer scores coming out of the event.
Oh, yeah.
After all the transfers are done.
Love that idea.
And people on, hey, how much did you gain, relative to the capital you had to spend in some way. So coming up with it probably wouldn't work as a direct like delta of the transfer score, but finding some way, hey, given how many seats you had, or how much salary cap you have to spend on the transfers, how did you do relative to everybody else?
Sure.
I think that'd be something that, as it is with all aspects of the game, something for people to beat their chest about, and hey, we did the best we possibly could with the transfers, and they rewarded us with a high ranking. Mm-hmm. And there doesn't even necessarily have to be rewards to go along with that. There's some leaderboards in this game that don't have rewards, but it would just be something interesting for people to go and see, and sort of be proud of how well their leadership did.
No, I love that.
You want a draft ranking?
A little bit.
You want a fantasy football draft ranking to go back to the American peaks.
Abria can't help himself. Just AAM. We're talking about American football here, so just
and I know that.
Okay, I just want to make sure you know. So I just got to bring you back in. It's okay. So I love that idea. I mean, even just to like kind of talk to what you're talking about, Dead. I would love, since we have all these leaderboards, I don't love going to have to go to server 96 to look at how strong Abria is getting, since we have already the transfer, the transfer number set. I would love right now, there should be a little like icon. And again, this is me not knowing or understanding if this is really tough to do. But from a developer standpoint, if this is not hard to do, this would be a really cool thing for everyone to see. Who has the most kills out of the entire 96? Who is the strongest? All the stuff you see currently on your current server would be awesome to see from your current transfer set, right? That would also help people kind of guide themselves where they need to go. And then from a competition standpoint, like Dead kind of said, this is going to make people be more competitive overall. Right now, like Abria, AAM, as well as Dead, they're all at the top of their leaderboards in their respective servers. But now when you mix these folks in with these other servers, and whether it's 64 or 96, they're going to be more competitive, and that's going to drive everything in a positive way. But that's just my last kind of last 2 cents. And I just wanted to say thank you again, Abria of server 96. Really appreciate you coming on. Deadlights server 200 and AAM of 269. I thought this was super fun. I had a great time, and this was fantastic. So I think people are going to really enjoy this. We are out of here. Appreciate the time. Over and out.